Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Polyhedron Cast episode 100.
Yes, we can. We can count that high.
Yeah, I've got my socks and shoes off for this process, though.
Big abacus.
At least we're all wearing pants this time.
Actually, I'm standing up for this recording, which means I always go pantless on a standing up recording.
Good man. How do we all stand for the 100th episode?
No, Steve told me off for playing with change in my pocket on a previous episode, so the easiest way to resolve that problem is just not have any pockets, no trousers.
That is definitely, well,
it's a solid solution. You can't fault it.
That's true.
I'm Steve Tudor.
I'm Andy Lewis.
I'm Sid Gill.
I'm John Cage.
And I'm Rory Summers.
We've got a full house. If you're playing Polyhedron Collider Bingo now, you should have won.
No one's dropped the F-bomb yet, so surely that's got to be one?
Yet. I love the yet.
No, it won't be long. Don't worry, it won't be long.
Is this like the second time all five of us have actually been on the same recording at the same time?
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's only the second one, yeah.
Yes.
Anyone bonus points for anyone who can remember which episode that was.
Is that
88.
a challenge for us or the audience, John? Because I don't think any of us could tell you that.
I can't know.
I'm sure it was 88 because I think it was my last episode that I did.
Rory wins that one then.
But I don't. Well, we need to confirm it. But yeah, I think it was 88.
So I went back last night to try and remember what it was like in the early days. So I went all the way back to episode 1.
Ooh.
And episode 1 aired on the 24th of February 2016. That's like 5 years ago, over 5 years ago.
It's over 5 years ago. I was going to say, actually, it's over 5 years ago that three of us were in the pub and we had one of those great pub ideas where we said, I know, we've got a podcast. You've got a microphone, we've got some games. Why not?
Some beer. How hard can it be?
Well, it turns out not very hard, but the audio quality was diabolical.
It really was.
There's loads of hiss. We're all around one microphone. We all talk over each other all the time. And because there's three of us around the microphone and we have very different voice volumes, let's say, even though I deliberately sat closer to the microphone and Andy had sat further away, he's still like, it's like he's in your ear and I'm like in the toilet next door or something. No, it's good. We've made some progress. 100 episodes in, we've made some differences.
This podcast is controlled by an ISO 9001 continuous improvement process.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. If this was audited, I would fail it so hard.
Given the circus that we've just gone through to even get to the start of this podcast, right? If this is what passes for an ISO 9000 accreditable process, frankly, it ain't worth it.
To be fair, you can only be audited on what you've written down. If you don't write it down, no audit.
That's true. And it's all about saying what you do and doing what you say. And since we regularly announce that we're ramshackle, and we are ramshackle, we might actually pass.
Exactly. It depends on what the policy is.
That's a really, really good point.
See?
Nailed it.
Mm-hmm. All over it. Stamp accredited. Move on.
Oh dear.
So 100 episodes. Congratulations, chaps. Well done.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah, well done all.
And only one member of this podcast has actually made all 100 of them. And that's only because he's the editor.
Yeah, nothing happens without Steve.
I thought you'd been on all 100 as well, Andy.
I've missed 2, I think.
There was an Essen preview that Andy wasn't there for, Steve. It was just you and I for that one. That was one that I know Andy wasn't there for.
Yeah, I've only missed 1 or 2. Not many, but
you were on holiday, weren't you? Doing safari or something?
I was in Kenya. Yeah, so I missed 2.
Kenya.
Yeah, I missed
Fairly
2,
good excuse, to be fair. Although in these days, you could have phoned in.
Yeah.
Not in the middle of the Serengeti, mate. They don't have Wi-Fi yet.
Better cell phone signal in a lot of the world. The developing world has better mobile phone signal than we do.
In the cities, yes. In the middle of nowhere, no.
But the lions must get bored. How do the lions make their videos on those songs on Weeble and stuff? I've seen it. Lions and tigers in Africa, mate. It's got to be. How else do they do that?
Well, actually, when I was there, I did see how the lions pass their time, and it's by pumping.
To be fair, a lot of the world passes the time doing that.
That's true. So. Yeah. Genuinely, we saw lions meeting when I was there, which was rather awesome.
Can we move on now, please?
We can move on now, yes.
Anyway, Elon's got you back, Andy. Starlink will be up soon. We'll have internet everywhere.
Sweet. What's the ping time going to be on that, though? A fortnight?
About 800 milliseconds.
That's not bad, actually, for a satellite comm system.
Don't quote me on that.
That number has been freshly removed from John's backside.
Polyhedron Collider making up facts for 100 episodes.
If there's one thing I've learned after 100 episodes, the most important thing is just say it confidently, and then, just don't...
And then wait for the feedback on Twitter or Board Game Geek.
Oh, true.
It's just a test to make sure that someone's listening.
Someone's always listening.
And that person that usually corrects us is Phil the Sheep.
That's true, yes.
Yeah.
He's good at that.
Our probably fairly official mascot by this point.
Hi, this is Paul Grogan from Gaming Rules, and I just wanted to wish all of the Polyhedron Collider crowd a very special and happy 100th episode. Congratulations on making it this far, especially with the current global climate, and I do look forward to seeing you all soon at some point in the future. By the way, when are you changing the name of the podcast to Polyfiller?
So what we've well, I say I've decided to do on this 100th episode is rather than have a normal episode, I thought we would actually go back, because it's a long time since we looked at what we considered to be like our favourite games or the best games, and I came up with a thought that all five of us are going to be on. If we pick 2 games each, that's 10 games. So therefore we have a Polyhedron Collider top 10 best games of all time list.
How could it possibly go wrong?
I mean...
When Andy picks 20, that's when it goes wrong.
Yeah, when Andy gets involved.
Narrowing it down to 2 is really hard.
It is very hard.
Yes. And to be fair, that was I kind of did that on purpose to try and make you really think about it. And also kept the requirements a bit woolly so that everyone can interpret it. Because we're not doing that whole big, like, Dice Tower does their top 10s where, like, everyone has their own top 10. So, you know, if we did one in the Dice Tower style, we'd have 50 games we'd be talking about because we'd all talk about our top 10s. And I know we can waffle about anything for God knows how long. I mean, everyone who's listening to this 100th episode will no doubt know we can talk about sofas, gardening, beer, anything other than board games, it seems, for as long as possible. So
any episode that gets within the first 20 minutes with a board game mention, I think we're doing well.
That'd be one of those PlayStation trophies, wouldn't it?
Achievement unlocked.
Yes.
Hey everyone, Frank here from the City of Games. I just wanted to jump in and say congratulations guys on your 100 episodes, which is absolutely crazy. Many people probably don't realise that I've been listening to your podcast and a huge fan of you guys for years and years, since before my first Kickstarter. In fact, you guys were probably the first, or at least one of the very first people in the industry to play one of my games. There's a photo of you on my first Kickstarter for the City of Kings, and that was over 4 years ago. And since that time, I've learned so much from you guys, and it's been a real pleasure. And I'm sure listeners everywhere have learned from you guys as well. So I want to say thank you. Without you guys, like, I wouldn't know where to buy light fittings, like how to decorate my house, my garden and barbecues, things about Teslas and all sorts. It's just been a roller coaster of information. And there's one time I learned about a board game, which is really cool because board games are a big hobby of mine as well. So I'm glad that you guys sometimes talk about those. But in all seriousness, congratulations. It's fantastic. And I look forward to the next 5 years.
There is no particular order to these games. So it's not actually a listed top 10. It is just 10 games which we consider the best games. And because Andy was so awkward in coming up with 20 games, I'm going to make him go first, just to force him to make a decision.
Nice.
I've made a decision, actually.
Okay then, Mr. Lewis.
And I'm going to start as we mean to go.
Lewis.
Yes, Dr. Lewis, you can get it right. I didn't slack off for 3.5 years at university to get that PhD without, Anyway.
It came with Frosties, didn't it?
It's not even that, mate. Not even that. I found it in
Collect
a bin.
12 crisp packets.
Oh yeah, of course. You had to write it. It didn't just come in the box, did it? You're not allowed to put toys in the box anymore.
Self-addressed envelope, Permission from bill payer, whoever he is, before you phone in. And I'm going to start as I mean to go on and completely flagrantly disregard the rules and pick 2 games for my first spot.
No, not allowed.
Get him
Move
out.
on.
Mostly because they are
Cut the
pretty
mic.
much the same.
But there's still 2 games, Andy.
Shush, just quiet you, Junior.
Julia.
I'm just young and handsome, and you hate me for it.
Through and through, Rory. Through and through.
I would argue, but you're probably right. Well, no, I am going to pick Teotihuacan, or Teotihuacan, as it is actually called, it was NSKN, but it's now Board and Dice, because they were merged / bought out. But I also picked Sulcan, because they are kind of one and the same game. Teotihuacan is extremely similar to Sulcan, both by Daniel Taschini, and that's as far as I'm going to say.
That's it. That's done. Okay,
No,
right. Who's next?
But Teotihuacan is based around the Incan, I think, South American culture, where there is a rondel, nice bloke, of 8 spaces, in each of which mostly there are essentially 2 things you can do. One is like a standard action where you can gather resources or build a house or whatever. But it's essentially a dice movement game. So you have 3 dice which perform are workers. You move one of your dice around, and wherever you land, you perform the action of that space, and points win prizes. But there's lots and lots of things going on. So in a typical Taschini game, there are 2 or 3 temple tracks you can go up. There's a massive pyramid in the middle that you can all contribute to building to. So it looks very impressive on the table. So when everyone puts in these massive, great, chunky wooden blocks down with symbols on, it starts to build up and looks very cool. And the replayability of the game comes with the fact that all of the spaces can be repositioned or randomly generated essentially at the start of the game. So you never really play the same game twice. And it's been...
Is that something that you pick, or is it something that's dictated by like a random roll or something?
You basically shuffle the massive tiles, basically. They're about 8 inches across, and you can shuffle them, and you basically deal them out onto whichever spaces you choose. There are some printed on the board, so you can start, if you the first game, you'll just use those. But as you get better and more experienced at the game, you can randomize them and overlay these tiles onto. Essentially, it has the effect of moving the action spaces around, so you never get the same game. Because if you get used to the game, then you'll form perfect strategies and yada, yada, yada. So moving them around keeps it fresh with a pH.
It's nice. It's always good to have a little mechanic that always shuffles things up a bit like that, I think.
Exactly, yes. But it's been expanded a few times over the last few years, mostly by David Turksey. Big Davey T gets his hand in most of these games, to be fair to him, and he does a very good job of them, which has essentially added modular expansion. So the idea is you can throw in 1 or 2 of these additional mechanics, which add a new twist on the game. So you can add an additional resource or an additional temple track because, 4's not enough already.
I'm going to ask a rhetorical question here, Andy. Have you got all of the expansions?
Maybe.
Acquisition disorder strikes again.
Yes. Well, the thing is, for this one, I have actually used them all. Alora and I was sort of quite adamant quite recently over lockdown that we should play all of the expansions you have, Andy, because you have a ridiculous number, and she ain't wrong. I have more than 170 expansions in over 200 games.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, it's quite a lot. But as I say, for this one, I've used all of them. So again, they're modular, so you can pick and choose which ones you want to use.
All of them at once? Or all of them individually?
You wouldn't want to do that. that would be awful. That would be like playing Talisman with all of the expansions, John. You'd never finish it, and it would just break you.
Yes, true.
I mean, it's quite a thinky game anyway, because that's the kind of game I like. But mechanically, it's quite straightforward. It's just the further you get through the game, the more stuff triggers. It's one of those. So, you'll trigger an additional action because you've unlocked some technology, and when you've got that technology, it might give you more resources, which means you can do one more thing, and so on and so on and so on, and it kind of snowballs. So there's a lot to keep track of, so it's quite a lot going on. But I love it. I'm a really big fan of Daniel Taschini's games. And it is one of those games that, as Steve asked me this afternoon, what game would you never ever refuse to play if somebody asked you? And it's pretty much Teotihuacan. I really, really love it, and it really scales well between 2, 3, and 4 players. So it is definitely up there for me.
Cool. How many times do you reckon you've played it?
I could probably tell you if I could bring up my tracker. In fact, here we go.
While Andy does that, I just want to. Just want to point out that we've had our first, our next Polyhedron Collider bingo, where Andy just said Talisman. So if you missed it, cross off Talisman off your little chart.
For the record,
well
I didn't
spotted.
mention it.
No, I know. Andy said it. I think Andy gets more mentions of it than
It
anyone
wasn't
else.
necessarily in a bad light.
Interestingly, in the very first episode that we ever did, we talked about Talisman, and Andy said, and I quote, "I must play that. It sounds like fun."
We can all make mistakes, John. To be fair, I did play it, although nobody had fun.
That's not true. I'm sure I did.
Yes, I'm sure you did. Yes, that's fair. Since the 14th of April 2020, I've played it 5 times. But I have played
since you bought the tracking app, basically.
Yeah.
Basically, since I bought the tracking app, yes. So in about a year, I've played it 5 times, though I would like to play it more. And I have played it a lot more before then, so probably about 10 times, I reckon, overall, since I bought it. And
How much of an investment does one play take in that game? How long does it take you to get through?
I would say, well, if you're first playing it, probably about 2.5 to 3 hours. But once you're used to it, probably about an hour and a half.
All right.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Steep,
Actually. That's
steep
about right.
learning curve then.
Yes.
Yes, because I've got to admit, it feels a bit unintuitive at first, especially if you've not played Sulkin, which Sulkin does things slightly differently because Sulkin's one with the revolving gears. So it's a game where you really do have to think like 3 turns in advance because that's where your bits are going to end up. But I agree with Andy, and it is more or less the same game, just with some of that like thinking ahead taken out. But yeah, the first time you play it, you're like, what? I've got to do what now? I've got it cocoa beans to do what? And then I do how do these tiles work?
Mm-hmm.
What eclipses? I mean what? And the thing is, it's one of those games that the first time you play it just feels like you're just having these rules bombarded at you, and you're thinking, I don't understand absolutely any of this. But once it sinks in, you're like, well, why did I find that so complicated? Why?
So true, really. And the same is true with Tolkien. I mean, I played Tolkien with a few relatively new board gamers, actually, and trying to explain it how to play it. And it's literally just put your worker down or take your worker off. That's it, And we played it. I should point out that this individual was about 20. She was a student at the time. She must have been about 20, 21 at the time. And she'd not really played many board games at all. We were at Alora's house a few years ago. We explained how to play it. And I'd played Tolkien a lot. And so had Alora, and we got whipped.
But going back to the board game.
That too. But no, Steve's right. It's once you're used to it, it's actually quite straightforward. It's one of those where a lot happens the further down the game you get. So everyone's got things that are kicking off because they've got technologies and abilities and things. And there are so many ways to get points in these games, that there are different ways you can play. So if you notice one person's playing one way, you can play a completely different way, and obviously then they're generally quite balanced like that, which is quite nice. So yes,
I do really like the sound of this. Can I say that? Can we play this next time we have a games day next month, please? Guys?
Yes, we can. Very much so.
I
Again,
would also
somebody
like
wants
to play it
I
at
will.
some point.
Okay.
When I can find 3 hours of continuous time where I actually get to sit down without any distractions or any small hands trying to reach for everything.
How old's Sammy now, John?
Sammy is 1 year and 3.
Well, I'd say 1 year, so 2021 1. So we can play in, 2038 when we leave for uni?
Probably play
No,
next
no,
year. We've already beat us.
Steve, don't say that, because that gives me fear that there's no hope for me either. And I want to be at the next game session. So I want it to be, like Rory just said, next month. Let's go for next month. Because I'm shipping him off to my mum's house next month.
That's exactly what I did. Exactly what I did for a whole day. I just got McDonald's on the way home.
2 weeks, mate. He's going off for 2 whole weeks.
Nice.
Wow.
I hope you got those. I hope you got those 2 weeks booked off work, Sid.
No, I'm not wasting leave on that. I've got whole afternoons and evenings. I've got
All that time back.
What am I
I
gonna-
can't imagine what is an evening like without children. I
That's
don't
right.
know.
A distant memory.
Instead of
did it-
spending the entire
That's what it is.
evening on
It's
Zoom with you
wonderful.
guys. But
We did it a couple of years ago, and Sue and I didn't know what to do. We're like, the hell do we do with all this time? So I'm going to fill it with games.
I refer you to the aforementioned lion conversation.
and the slightly previously mentioned whipping.
Be careful, because that could lead to more kids.
Hang on, boys. I'm just going
So
to
the
take
cycle
some
continues.
notes.
Not from Andy. Please, God, no.
So 21-year-old student, Teotihuacan, and a whipping, right? That's what I've got to put down.
That's the main bullet
That's the
points
main
of the
bullet
podcast
points.
episode so far.
That's the main
Marvellous.
takeaway there. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, God. Somebody's mentioned another game quick before we fall really down this rabbit hole.
Yeah, so that was Teotihuacan by Board and Dice. Now,
Nice.
Hi, it's Richard at We're Not Wizards, and I just want to wish the best to Ringo, Paul, George and John at Pokebum Wank Coat Hanger. All the best on their 100th episode. Put some more work in, guys, and catch up, because you're taking ages.
Steve, why don't you pick one?
Right, go on then. So I'm going to be a little bit off this, because what I'm picking is technically a miniatures game, although it gets bundled with board games quite a lot because it's by a company known for board games and plays more like a board game than your traditional miniatures games do. And that is X-Wing. And I'm specifically talking about first edition because even though second edition has now been out for about 3 years, I've not actually played it yet.
Oh,
Because everyone I played X-Wing with has moved away. So I can't play it anymore, which is a bit annoying. But what this is it was originally based on one of the World War II dogfighting games with some sort of variations. And you have pre-painted miniatures, which, everyone scoffed at when it was first mentioned, of your X-Wings, your TIE fighters, and every single possible ship that's been in every single Star Wars film and or comic, cartoon, video game, and everything else. And you secretly select maneuvers, which you then put templates down to represent these maneuvers, which allow you to, get into position. Hopefully you can manage to maneuver yourself so you can shoot your opponent without being shot. Then, of course, roll a whole bunch of dice, which, because it's a Fantasy Flight game, these are all custom, brightly coloured dice, and hopefully knock out your opponent. I love it not just because it's Star Wars, which gives it a big tick. I love it not just because the Star Wars miniatures it produces are beautiful. For pre-painted miniatures, they really are amazing. Little ships, X-Wings, as I said, X-Wings, TIE Fighters, Millennium Falcons, all that's in there. But I love it because it's actually a really, really good game as well. And it's not just a case of buying the most expensive army. There are issues at points where people could buy certain expansions which came with certain power-up cards, which meant people really thought they were better. But I'd been to tournaments where I'd seen people who quite literally just bought 3 ships and learnt how to use them and kicked the arse of the person who'd bought the Tantive 4 just so he could get the special 3PO card. He'd spent £30 on ships, his opponent had spent £130 on ships, and he quite literally flew circles around this other person. Because It's all about being clever and trying to anticipate what your opponent's going to do. It's all about, is your opponent going to move to the left or the right? Well, which way are you going to go? Are you going to try and get behind them? Are you going to try and do a loop-the-loop and try and shoot them behind, knowing that's going to cause you issues later down the line?
It's also important not to fly into asteroids or off the side of the board, I discovered.
And that's easily done when you first
I was about to say,
start.
that is quite easy to do. I've flown off the edge of the board very quickly. What happens when that happens, Steve? He dies.
Well, you could have told me that sooner. What, and ruin the surprise?
Bye!
Let's reset. Okay, we'll call that one a learning game, right? And the following 3 as well, John? Yes, still learning.
Still learning. It's all a rich, bountiful experience.
It is a clever game because that's the one where you get those sort of arcs where that represent the flight of the ships, because ships obviously don't move around, literal round corners like in Tron.
Yeah.
They have sweeping arcs and stuff, and you've got to take all of that into account, which is kind of cool.
The way the X-Wing fights work in Star Wars has always basically been World War II. In fact, if you can ever see any documentaries about how Star Wars was made, like the first cut of Star Wars, all the dogfighting scenes were actually just ripped off of World War II movies. And to the point where apparently some of them you can even still match, because the special effects people just went, well, there's no point not changing that. It's a fantastic shot. Let's just replicate that with an X-Wing and a TIE fighter.
That's pretty cool.
I didn't know that. That's wicked.
Yeah, and it really distills that down. It really has that you've got to think about when you're sweeping out. I mean, there are the occasional ship which breaks the rules. TIE fighters can do little barrel rolls, which can get them into position. If you get there's the Arc fighter can do this little shunt, and A-wings can do boosts, and interceptors can do boosts, which give them that little extra bit of movement. So there's all clever things to it. which give you all these different options you can do. And then there's a whole plethora, of course, because it's a miniatures game. There's all kinds of loadouts you can do, which torpedoes you give your ships, which pilots you give your ships. So the base stat for a ship is the same, but then you'll get bonuses and special abilities based on the pilot that's in that ship.
I didn't know that. That's very cool.
It's like Warhammer 40k, isn't it? Like you can specify like a standoff between two opposing forces, and you pick like the number of points that you want to go for, and then so you just sort of point buying what your forces are going to contain.
Yeah. As I said, I've only played the first edition, but yeah, that was tournament games for that were 100 points. So you were rigid 100 points to play with. And then that give you this really actually limited amount you could do, because the maximum I think we worked out you get with 100 points was 5 ships. And that was basically like 5 E-Wings armed with a pea shooter. Whereas to win the tournaments, you really needed at least 2 ships, so you couldn't just get like a Millennium Falcon and just put everything on it, because then that would just concentrate the firepower and everything would shoot it down. So, yeah, some really clever things in trying to balance those lists as well to make a really decent, competitive game as well.
I love those kind of optimization things you can get in a game like that. So you're definitely, your agency in it is massive, because not only is it just your choices in the game, you've also got to pick your forces right in the first place.
Yeah,
That's
and
cool.
I also felt with X-Wing that you could decide how you wanted to play based on your style quite a little bit as well. And so I found it was easy in some games because if you think 40k, by the time you picked your faction, you've already picked your strategy. If you pick Tau, well, then you're going to have a line of people with guns. If you picked, orcs, then you're going to want to get into close combat kind of thing. Whereas the variability of the different ships and pilots and equipment in X-Wing means that each side could do a different kind of, you could do lots of little ships with lots of little guns, or you could do a couple of big ships, or you could do ships where you try to fly in tight formation and just try and overwhelm them and things like that. So, yeah.
It's cool. So I'm going to ask you the same question, Steve. How many times do you reckon you played it in total?
I have kept a log of this, and I have logged 55 games of X-Wing.
Bloody hell.
That's not bad.
That's good.
So it's actually the second most played game in my collection after Codenames. And Codenames only wins because a game of Codenames takes about 10 minutes. And we used to play it every Tuesday after everyone had finished their main games until the train arrived, basically. Yeah. But I used to do X-Wing tournaments as well. So you'd play 8 to 10 games sometimes in a day of that.
Yeah, okay.
Especially with me playing, because I am crap at it. I love this game, but I'm terrible. So my games would be over in 5 minutes, and we'd have a fun game afterwards. So
That's a good game.
It's having fun that's the most important thing, Steve, not winning.
yes.
No.
That's what we tell Steve.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a whole philosophical debate in itself, isn't it?
No.
Not for Andy.
So at some point, I'm going to have to investigate second edition of it, because I've got all the ships and I've got all the rules for first edition. But what they did is they reset everything so you could, and change some of the rules and added some new ships in and things like that. So at some point, I need to revisit it. But unfortunately, it needs a bit of an investment, because I have to invest in all the cards and tokens and bases, because the base of the miniature gives you like your firing arcs and things like that. So there's a little bit of they did these kits which you could use to kind of upgrade your stuff. But unfortunately, to actually bring my entire collection back up to second edition, I think I priced it up as like over £100 just in cardboard tokens. So I stayed off it for a little bit.
Yes. Oh, well. Excellent.
So that was X-Wing from Fantasy Flight Games.
Very good.
Hi everyone, this is Luke Hector from the Broken Meeple, wishing the Polyhedron Collider fantastic congratulations for your 100th episode. It's been a great thrill ride all the way through. Granted, we still need to work on some of the game taste, but I guess that takes longer than 100 episodes to develop. But great to hear from you guys, and great that you're doing well. So stay safe, stay cool, and keep producing content. Take care. Bye-bye now.
I'm going to start with the game that Andy raised an eyebrow at when I put it down on the list, and I'm going to go with Waggle Dance, which is a fantastic dice placement game designed by Mike Nudd and published by Grubbling Games. Now it is out of print right now, but I think you can still get copies of it if you're lucky. So this is it's a great little game where you've got a bunch of dice, and those dice are your bees. You roll your dice, and they'll dictate what actions you can do for your turn. And you've got a string of cards that are A through G, I think it is, each with the numbers on 1 through 6. And you can place your number 1 die, or your die with number 1 onto any card with the number 1 slot where it's still open. And each card is a different action, so they can be building your hive bigger, you are laying an egg, or incubating an egg, collecting nectar, turning nectar into honey. And that's what the game all hinges on. It's collecting nectar, turning that into honey, and then when you reach a certain amount of honeycombs in your hive, you win. It is a gloriously looking game. The dice are really bright, colourful. They've got little hexes on instead of pips. They look a bit like sweets, really, or candies. The wooden cubes of it are nice, big, chunky cubes. The artwork is this isometric kind of lots of greens and bright colours for the flowers. It looks really interesting and very accessible, approachable on the table. It's really easy to teach because it is just roll some dice. You've rolled a 1. You can put your 1 on any card where there is a number 1 spot available, and you're just trying to chain all your actions together. So once all the players have placed all their dice, all their workers, you run through this nighttime scene where you trigger all the cards in order and collect those resources. And you're slowly trying to build up your amount of workers, the amount of nectar, where you've got this great little player interaction where you're sending more bees to this colour flower to get more than they do and make sure you have the most. So you need 4 of the same colour to get to turn it into honey. It is a fabulous, fabulous game. It looks brilliant, easy to teach, very accessible, great theme.
You say it was for multiple players?
Yeah, you can
just
play.
2?
No, 1 to 4. This one. The solo rules are on Board Game Geek, but yeah, the game itself comes with 2 to 4. Really great how it scales as well. You just roll a bunch of dice and you blot out a load of spaces across the cards, and you blot out a number of spaces depending on how many players you're missing.
You said the central flower. Does that mean then that you can block other people, or is it just like a central resource pool where you just all go?
You all just go. But one of the things I really love about this, having played it several times, is you can anticipate what your opponents are going to do. Your hive, your hive is very easy to read. So I know you're trying to get this particular flower. I know you're trying to get more eggs, or to grow your hive. So I can strategically, right, I'm going to try and block you from those spaces. It will potentially inconvenience me, but I know it's really going to inconvenience you. I know that you need 1 more white cube of nectar before you can turn that into honey. So I'm going to do everything I can to stop you getting that 1 white cube. You can do it, but it's really easy to read what everyone's got, and because you can see what dice they have as well. I know, like, the white cube is, I don't know, a 6. You've only got 1 die that's on a 6. So I know you really want to put that on the white flower, which is the number 6 flower. So I know you have to do that. So I try and make it as hard as possible for you to do that, or try and draw you off to put that die somewhere else. It's really great. There's got this really indirect player interaction like that, where you just essentially have to read, make assumptions, and try and inconvenience them. And then there are cards that you can get throughout the game, queen cards, which are a lot more nasty, stinger cards, really, that can thwart you a bit, or give you incredible bonuses and allow you to do some really surprising stuff. Belting game. And I suppose to answer your questions, you're probably going to ask you, John. So I've played this, I'd say in the region of 20 odd times. One of the reasons I've played it that many is because you can play it easily, including a teach in an hour. So I used to take this into work and play it on my lunch breaks with mates. Kira's a big fan of this. It's a game I always get this out at summer because of the theme, bees, and how bright and colourful it is. It always reminds me of summertime.
Do you drink Waggle Dance beer while you play Waggle Dance the board game?
No, I've not done that, no, because I've played it, as I mainly I've played this at work, and we don't have a bar at work.
Well, there is something to improve.
There is. There is.
To put on your next ISA improvement notice. we need Waggle Dance at work.
We need Waggle Dance beer at work.
Team building necessities.
Yeah.
That sounds cool. Sounds like my kind of game, actually.
I think you'd really enjoy. I think Andy would really enjoy it. I think last time I went to Andy's house, I took it with me on the off chance that we'd play it. I think it's a really fun game. It's very easy to teach, and I think if you're a novice board gamer, it's got an accessible theme. It's not sci-fi. It's not overly fantasy. It's just bees and gardening, essentially. Really, really accessible. But you can teach this game very quickly, and I think gamers that have been around, played quite a few board games, you'll pick up the rules really quickly, and you'll start playing a very deep level of strategy, and everyone will do that, and you'll find it a real challenge, which is good.
That's cool. It's nice when you've got a game where it's the barrier to entry isn't so severe that if you played it like 100 times, you're going to absolutely wipe the floor with everyone. If people can come in and actually stand a chance.
Yeah, you can still get surprised in this game. I'd like to say that I always win, but it's probably about 50-50. Kira's very good at it.
Nice.
Good.
It'd be interesting to know if this game's ever going to get a reprint, because unfortunately, Grubbling Games who originally published it are no more, and no sign of them ever emerging again by the looks of it, which is slightly sad news.
At the last expo, I was chatting to Mike Nudd, the designer, because he was playtesting essentially the sequel called Termite Towers. Similar, but with some big key differences, to be honest.
Termites being one of those.
Termites being one of them, and it has like a Tetris thing.
You're on it today, Andy, aren't you?
Adding real value there, mate.
Oh yeah, all
Do you know
over
what?
it, mate.
I thought it was about cheese making, frankly. Idiot
Well said.
termites.
That's where you'd be wrong.
God, gee, honestly,
See,
call me a fool,
Clearly,
eh?
you haven't been paying attention, Mr. Gill.
It's all about
I have been
termites and bees.
listening to our colleague and all of the interesting things he's had to say.
But Termite Towers, the sequel, kind of very similar. Takes some and adds some new bits onto it. One of which is termites. But Mike was saying that he might be shipping that game out. I think his the contract with Grubbling is coming to an end for the period of time. So he might try and get a new publisher.
Well, according to Zatu Games. Never reliable. It is on pre-order at Zatu.
Oh,
but
that is
that could
100% bollocks.
I was going to put it slightly better than that, but yes, I concur. That is steaming horse shite.
It's on pre-order from where?
Zatu has been iffy of late with saying there are things available on pre-order, and you've always kind of gone, not entirely sure I trust that. But here we can definitely say it's definitely not on pre-order because no one's making this game at the moment.
There you go.
So if you can find it in a shop, pick it up. You'll pick it up for about £30 tops. But yeah, if it's not on pre-order at all, it's not being printed. My local game shop has got a few in because it's Tim who sold it to me and raved about it, so I know he's still got a few in.
There's one on eBay for £20.
I would.
It says new, in shrink.
Click. How many games do you own now, Andy?
One more than he did an hour ago.
Yeah.
No, I haven't gone for it.
453. Click.
Over
454.
200. No, I think the number of games I own is commensurate with Mr. Tudor these days. That's just I own more expansions. I think
that makes sense.
It's about 200, something like that.
A lot of board games.
That's a lot of cardboard.
It
a
is.
lot of unpainted miniatures.
I am looking to thin down my collection in the near future, so if anybody is interested in potentially buying...
You're going to get rid of your copy of Monopoly or something?
Copies.
I actually own 3 copies of Monopoly.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I have one that was given to me as a present when I was sort of a teenager, which I still have. I have a copy I actually bought when I was a student, which is like this ridiculously deluxe version of it.
Shocker.
I know. But that was before I played modern board games. I was just like, I'll buy a fancy board game. And then I have a copy that we used to play as our family when I was younger. And this copy is like from like the 70s or something. It's really old. Maybe even earlier than that. And it's in pretty poor condition, but it's still, is functional. So I have that one as well. And I can't really get rid of that because they were like, that's what I had when I was young.
Hi, this is Chris from Tabletop Gaming Magazine. I just wanted to say congratulations on colliding 100 polyhedrons. Polyhedron Collider is my favourite podcast about going to Dunelm, thinking about buying a new mattress and getting your kitchen fitted. Oh, and when the lads do talk about board games, that's pretty good too. Cheers to you all. Until the next 100 episode.
Mr. Cage.
Oh, see, I tried to put this in order that we were going roughly, but
No, and I've mixed it up just to keep you on your toes.
God damn it. Okay, well, I would feel remiss if I didn't mention talisman. No. Do you know what? I've got over the whole talisman thing. It's been 100 episodes. I've got better.
The drugs have helped.
But there are some other games that, at least one of them that I've had since about that same sort of time, and that is Neuroshima Hex, which we talked about on the show before.
Long time ago.
Yes, indeed. Possibly in the first few, I imagine, actually.
I have a feeling it might have been the first episode, or possibly the second. I think you're right, John.
It's not in the first 2/3 of the first episode because I didn't listen to that last night. But so if you don't remember it, or if you've never played it, essentially it's a turn-based tile placing game. You have a little arena. You each have a little army, and you've got very distinct asymmetric. No? Yes. Not asynchronous.
Yes, we've learned.
Yeah, asymmetric forces. So they've all got very different characteristics. Some of them will be better at close combat stuff. Some of them will be able to shoot over long distances. Some of them will be super maneuverable. All sorts of different stuff. And those expansions that add extra armies that have even more different characteristics. But essentially, you take it in turns to place these little tiles down. They're little hexes. You get to pick which way they face. And they each have a little initiative number. And that's very important because basically you're taking it in turns placing these tiles until either someone pulls a battle token or the board's full. And when the board's full or the battle token arrives, you kick off for a fight. And then you go in initiative order. So whatever's the lowest, I seem to remember, initiative goes first and they start firing. And if they kill something first, everything on the same initiative goes at the same time. If they kill something, it obviously doesn't get to fire later. So when you're placing these tiles, you've got this careful thing of, I need these things to be pointed at those different places. And that's got a long range. That's going to be able to hit that thing over there. And he's going to go before the other guy's token, which means he's going to take that one out. And then on their turn, they put a token down that takes out that thing that you were taking out from their thing.
I'm a little bit lost already.
So it's like...
It's a lot simpler than it sounds.
It's a little bit chessy in that you've got... different things have different abilities. You've got shields on some of these things. You've got armor. Some things have got a couple of hit points. Most units die on one hit. Some of them can net other units. That's a particularly irritating.
It's hilarious.
Yeah, it's quite funny that. The thing is, it's not like chess, though, is it? Really, because it's asymmetric. So the difference in the teams, you can't really plan ahead because somebody could be holding.
It's like chess. In that you've got you need to plan many moves ahead. You're constantly thinking about the overall sequence that you need to be able to win this thing.
It's also a game with little randomness because the effect of what happens in the battle is not affected by any randomness. The only randomness is what units you draw at a pile each round.
Yeah, because I remember
availability.
You pull your hand, don't you? You pull your units into your hand that you can place randomly.
Yeah. You get a choice of about, is it 4 or 5 units you get a pool of, and then you can pull 2 down.
You pick up 3.
That's it, yes.
And then you have to choose to discard one of those 3 each round.
That's right, yeah.
It's been a long time since I played it, but it is.
Yeah,
I concur with John. It's bloody good.
It is good. There's been a reprint since I bought my copy, and it does look slightly prettier. But I think the base game is essentially the same as it was back then.
Yes.
It's still just as playable. It's still horribly addictive. It's one of the few board games that I ever got the app for, and I played that app to death. Like, just be sat there on the bus, or waiting for some code to compile, or other boring activities.
Compiling. Yeah, the other good thing about it is that the board is actually kind of reasonably sized, kind of average sized board, but the arena in which you actually play is aggressively small, so it forces action. It's really clever like that.
It scales as well, so depending on the number of players, you get slightly more space to play in. So it's always aggressively small.
How many players is it for then? 2 to 4?
4.
It's 2 to 4, yes.
Yeah.
Also, it's worth noting that the game was kind of re-themed and re-implemented as Monolith Arena.
I knew there was a re-theme of it.
Yeah. So it's the same game with a couple of minor tweaks. main thing is about this like expanding tower, which is not part of Neuroshima Hex, and all the units in there are completely redesigned. So it's almost like more factions for Neuroshima Hex, but you can't play them with Neuroshima Hex because they're slightly different. But yeah, Monolith Arena is the same game implemented again, and it's just as good. I mean, it really is a belting game.
Is that Ignacy Chevicek from Portal? Was that?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's Portal Games, yes. He's not Ignacy, it's designed.
Oh, is it not? Oh, okay.
No, it is designed by Michael Orax. I hope I've pronounced that right.
He has done some stuff for... Is it Awaken Realms?
Yes, he has done quite a bit for Awaken Realms. And the last thing he worked on, actually, which was on Kickstarter, was the Frostpunk board game.
That's a good choice, John.
Neuroshima Hex is
You said
definitely...
Neuroshima Sex then,
You
didn't
said Neuroshima Sex, didn't you? You did say that.
Said a dirty word.
That's
dirty
a
word.
very
There's
different
going to be
game,
a
that is.
beeper for you.
I doubt it.
Well, yeah, I've given plenty of opportunity for Steve to beep us, so you're going to get beeped. I think you should beep large chunks of what John's just said.
Yeah.
Sounds overly...
Just random words.
No, just for the mystery, so the listener will never know what John really said.
My favourite game is...
Just beep every time I mention beep.
Every time anyone says talisman from this point onwards.
But we still not got the talisman bell.
I'd
I have
forgotten
to
about
find
that.
that audio file now.
There you go. Ding! That's 3 dings so far tonight. 4.
Brilliant.
Dear.
At least 5.
Oh, Mr. Gill, I don't believe you've been yet.
Yeah, it's my turn now. My turn in front of teacher. Right. I've agonised over this one for quite a few weeks.
Weeks? Right. You mean seconds?
No, seriously. Since Steve said it, right? My list is not long, right? I'll be honest with you. I've played a couple of what you guys have talked about tonight. I've looked at your guys' list. I know the names for a few of them, but I don't know many of them. So I've gone back to what I kind of know, right? And I almost feel unclean saying this, given how much I've been saying about it the last few weeks. I feel quite dirty, I must admit.
I don't believe you.
I love how you're building this up. I haven't looked at the document, so I don't know what you're saying, but I love the build.
Right.
It's tense.
Drum roll.
You finished farting? Oh, good. All right. No, so my first choice is D&D 5e.
Yeah, boy.
There, I've said it. It's out there now, right? What can I say?
It's a strong choice.
It's a strong choice. What can I say about D&D? All right, tabletop role-playing game. It talks for itself, doesn't it? I mean, it's got years of following behind it. Cooperative, fantasy role-play. Bring all your mates around. Have a hell of a good time. Live out your fantasies. I mean, I don't think I need to say more than that about D&D 5e, really. Why is it in my list?
You know this is a talking podcast, right? So
I do, but I don't want to tell, all right, we can go through the character sheet and we can go through the various books and various handouts and all that if you really want, but fundamentally, guys, get your mates around, pretend you're a rogue or a knight or a paladin or whatever you want to be in a fantasy world.
An incredibly famous bard.
Incredibly famous bards are all welcome at this table, and just live out who you want to be. Give yourself some stats. You give yourself a basis of rules to play with. You sit down with one of your mates becomes a games master. He runs the game for you, or she, indeed, or they these days. I believe.
Okay,
very good.
So whoever is in that games master role, they are helping you collectively to run a story. And that's kind of it. Beyond that, you've got some guidelines, some rules, some basic structure, but otherwise you're making it up and you're just enjoying yourself is the bottom line with D&D for me. But why is it controversial? Why did I agonize over it? Because I've been on a downer about it for months and weeks and years now, nearly. But
Till we know it, Jesus Christ.
But it brought me back to the table. It brought me back to the community. I spent, 2 years playing this with you guys.
Mm.
It re-energized me. And loved it. And I absolutely loved it. And do you know what? It's like a first girlfriend. It's been around in my life all the time. It's been there. It's been there before I was born in one form or another. Right? I've grown up with it. I probably started playing it properly back in the 3 days. What's that? 2099, somewhere around about then is where I really got stuck into it. I fell out of love with it. Went to university and those kind of things. Life happened. 10, 15 years of my life, didn't go back to it. And then Steve one day goes, come and have a join us. D&D 5e, it came out a couple of years after it came out. We went, yeah, all right, mate. Got some time. Let's get back amongst it.
One of us.
It is brilliant, but it does these days, and I'll explain more later about what I mean by this. It does feel like a first girlfriend. It really does. It's got that kind of emotional kind of attachment for me, and it is fun. It plays really well. I love it, but I also don't love it, if that makes sense. It jars on me. It irritates me in some ways, but overall, it is a good game. And the campaigns for it are well written. Wizards of the Coast and that got involved. God, when did they get involved, Steve? 20 years?
About the time third edition
came
out.
So about 20 years ago. And the campaign books that are produced for it, you can do anything you want.
So go on, Sid. So why you said that you've fallen out of love with it a bit? I don't know whether I've just been playing a different game or different characters, or I'm just easily entertained. But I don't feel like I've. Okay, it's Steve's nodding.
Not just nodding, he was vigorously, emphatically nodding there.
Nodding so fast his head was a blur.
Definitely that one.
I've got to admit, Jack, I don't take this the wrong way, but you can be entertained quite simply, I found.
I do try.
Look at the shiny. Look at the shiny.
Ooh, can I have the shiny?
Just rattle some keys in front of him.
Your taste in TV programs and films is definite testament to that.
That's very true.
I have an eclectic taste. So I don't know. For me, I still love the game. I still absolutely love every bit of it. It always felt to me like I love stories and I love making up stories. And this is someone's written the bones of a story for you, but you get to make up your own version of it. It's all on your characters and their interaction with the world and how that plays out. And I think that's hilarious, especially when you've got a good group of mates together and you play off one another. It's just perfect. And that still has the magic for me.
Listen, mate, it's fantastic. I love it. It's why it's in my selection. I cannot disagree and argue with that. But it is this Jekyll and Hyde with me. And, I cannot criticize the 2 years that we played it together as a group. They were some of the best gaming I've done, even going back to when I played it Baldur's Gate and various things, and back in the second edition and third edition in the early days, right? Even I was a young kid then. I didn't really know what the hell I was doing. I was just playing a game because all your pals were playing it, and then that's what you kind of did, right? But then I played it with you guys, and I kind of found a new thing about it. I found that it was a wonderful way to kind of play with your pals. That was not just going out drinking heavily, right? Because that's when I
combine the two. Sometimes
we did have a bit of booze, but that was because it was part of character, an alcoholic rogue and stuff like that. I'm not living out my own life and anything like that. Right?
The character now, you're playing an alcoholic pirate.
Mate.
Previously, before then, you played an alcoholic grave robber. Hang on.
Every good story has some grounding in fact, right? And just because alcoholism is my grounding in fact, right, doesn't make it any less valid.
No, but I think you've definitely got a point there, Sid. I was looking at, because I was going to put D&D in my list of two, because I started looking at the numbers of it, and I was actually, we started playing D&D in 2018, beginning of 2018, and at that point, I didn't know you, Sid, at all. I think I'd barely spoken to John at this point. Steve and Andy and I had like a little messenger group where we were normally just slagging people off.
It's not changed.
But see, for me, I think the only reason, but we became friends. I joined this podcast through D&D. Yep. Largely, I think. That started 2018, we started playing D&D. Later that year, I started writing reviews for Polyhedron Collider. The following year, I joined the podcast. And then here we are, going to 40th birthday parties and all that type of stuff. We become involved in each other's lives. And we weren't sat around a pub table just drinking and, playing pool or anything like that. We were playing D&D. And although we were pretending to be other people, we had that shared camaraderie and we got to know each other and became friends through that shared experience. And like I said, we end up telling a story which other people who played Storm King's Thunder will have a similar story, but ours is our own.
And that is exactly why I love it. Everything you've just said there is no two stories are ever going to be the same, because no two groups of people, even if playing the same game twice, won't be the same, because you'll not be the same person playing it. You will have your own life and stories and experiences to bring to that table, and it will change the game, and it will be a completely different place. So it is absolutely brilliant. It is fantastic. But why do I like it?
You've had better girlfriends since.
Well, you're always, you're young back then when you had your first girlfriend. You think it's the best thing you've ever played, isn't it? Or the best thing you went out with. But no, but it's not even that. It's my analogy breaks down basically because I'm not clever enough for a good analogy. But it's.
I think the issue with 5e is the more that we've encountered it and played it and experienced it and read various campaigns that are going on, I think a lot of the new ones need very careful management.
That is one problem, but that's a other side of the table, I think, and you guys need to come back to that. But I'll just come back to John's question about why I struggle with it, and it for me is, if I'm absolutely honest, it's the stodginess of the combat. That is why I struggle with it. I find it a bit dusty, a bit kind of old school, but not in a nice old school
compared
way.
to the games you've played since
compared to the more modern systems and some of the newer games that have now hit the world. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but this is where the girlfriend analogy works again, is you suddenly realize as you grow up that your desires and your palette and what you want out of a game is different. I still want the story. I still want the camaraderie. I still want to build that world with my mates. What I don't want to do is be around with rules and maths and little irrelevant shit that slows everything down for no reason. I can't be asked. I don't have time for that.
Ever.
I will not find Pathfinder. I will not play Dungeons and Spreadsheets either. Right? It's not what I want to do. Right? I don't want that, and that's what upsets me about D&D. And it isn't the stories. It isn't the camaraderie, and that's why I agonized over it. And it was a difficult decision because I know I'm down on it a lot. But I'm only down on it because I personally cannot find a way to square how to make combat slicker, how to make the things I don't like slicker. And then I look at other systems that have made it slicker. So in my head, I'm going, well, I can kind of get that camaraderie and that play on this other game. So I kind of get seduced off to the new model. I get seduced by the thigh-high boots and the fishnet tights kind of thing, maybe. But, that's the way of the world. But anyway, that's why, John. But I think Andy, you make a very good point on some of the campaign stuff, because we've had both fantastic experience with some campaigns and not so good experience with other campaigns, yet it's the same system and the stories and stuff are a really important part of it.
It's weird as well because it can be difficult sometimes separating the campaign from the rules, because you can have a good campaign with crap rules and you can have a crap campaign with good rules. It's almost like the two are almost two separate beasts. But yeah, it can sour the experience having a crap campaign.
Yes. If your story doesn't make sense or is badly told or is too linear, it's if you don't give the players enough freedom. But if you give them too much freedom in something like D&D, nothing happens. They'll just go off and wander, and you're like, get back on track. And it as I say, it requires very careful management. And to be fair, a lot of the campaigns that I've been looking through and we've experienced ourselves, they're good stories in their own right. They're just, I think, slightly badly executed at times, which is why you need a really experienced DM at times, which kind of is against the idea of everyone getting involved from the start, because if you need an experienced DM and you're just new to the hobby, it might be a little more difficult. So I don't know, but there are some very, very good campaigns out there. You're right, Sid.
Just homebrew it. Just homebrew the whole thing.
And I suppose this is another beauty about any
wrong?
RPG. Exactly, this is the thing though. I think one of the beauty things about D&D 5e, and certainly just D&D in general, is that it's actually quite forgiving if you pick it up. So if you've got something like, I don't know, Forbidden Lands or Coriolis, for example, that we've been playing recently, they have a brutal combat system. And if you screw something up, it's very unforgiving. You know, if somebody dies, that's it. It's actually very hard to die in D&D. So, you know, if somebody screws something up or there's a plot element that people missed, it's actually quite easy to put something later on, whereas some of the other systems are less easy and less flexible. So it does have that going for it.
There's the thing. I think it's a fantastic sandbox. You know, you can do whatever you want. You can be whoever you want. You can build your story. I think it's just that it is good. It is wonderful. If you haven't played it, go and play it, please.
It's in your top two,
excellent.
so it must be good.
It is brilliant. And do you know what?
Right.
Ignore me. Ignore what I say about being on a downer about it. I'm wrong. I'm stupid. I'm having an affair. Don't worry about it. I'll be all right soon. All right. I'll come back. I'll realise that it's just gloss and makeup and all the other crap, and I will come back. And it is wonderful. And if you haven't played it, I know we're more of a board game podcast, but I think tabletop role-playing games still fit into that. I mean, a lot of your Tainted Grails and all the other big games you guys are playing, that's what you're doing. You are role-playing, and all you've done is automate the game's master. Yeah. So I think it does fit in this space, and it is a wonderful game, and you will have fun. And that's because you're doing it yourself. You are making that. Somebody's giving you some structure. Somebody's told you to go and play in a certain way, fine, but you are making your story, and that's D&D 5e. I'm very sorry. I have a problem. I will fix it.
Your sins are repented, my child.
I love it.
I feel quite cathartic. I feel like I've got a load off my chest.
So, again, to cover the main bullet points, Sid likes D&D 5e because of thigh highs and fishnet stockings.
Hang on a minute. Put words in my mouth there. That's some dodgy editing going on.
And to be fair,
editing.
To be fair, we all had it on our longer lists when we were pruning stuff down. So we were all about
D&D 5e. That is not the thigh highs.
So we all like thigh high fishnet stockings. Yeah, it's a Polyhedron Collider 5 for 5 on the fishnets.
I've actually played. I've played D&D twice in the last 24 hours. I'm on a real D&D high.
Oh wow!
There you go.
That's cool.
Yeah, I played Tuesday lunch breaks. I played D&D for an hour.
Why is the boardroom still shut at 3:00? No reason at all.
We're
because
on lockdown.
Really
There's no one in the
encounter.
office anyway. Come on, I need the big screen for the display.
It is very cool. It is good.
This is Mike from Who Dares Rolls, wishing a Polyhedron Collider a very many happy returns on their 100th episode. Who would have thought it possible that a bunch of northern monkeys could sustain this amount of gibberish for this long and people would still be listening? What a shower. Country music. More Talisman, please, because obviously, clearly, that's the best game ever invented. Steve, stop playing this stupid, dippy Euros with Andy and roll more dice. Here's to the next 100, you miserable old gits.
Like Sid, I have agonised greatly over this list. And Tainted Grail was very, very close to the top here because I really love it. As I've mentioned many times, things like Nemesis we've all played and really love. And it's on John's list as well because it is ace. However, I have fallen onto the game one of the games actually that Steve not quite forced me to buy, but is absolutely and directly responsible for me buying all of it.
Andy, at no point have any of us forced you to buy any board games. All we've done is just mention a board game, extolled its virtues, and you've gone away yourself and then bought it.
That's close enough.
It's all on you.
It isn't all on me, and you'll find out why when I mention this game, because this is all on Tudor. And it is Mansions of Madness 2nd edition.
A fine game.
It is absolutely bloody wonderful. And it's all about, again, it's about a story. You know, who doesn't love a good story? Now, it just so happens that this story is one of chaos, horror, and the chances are you'll all probably die in some kind of nasty, nasty fashion. But that's part of the fun. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with any of this and who have never listened to this before, I'm pretty sure that's not very many people, Steve and now I are very large fans of the Lovecraftian mythos in general. And I think there is no finer example apart from maybe something Steve might talk about in the near future, than Mansions of Madness 2nd edition. So the idea is that you are a number of investigators, people with curious minds, in the 1920s-ish, in and around the town of Arkham, Massachusetts. Fictional, of course. But of course, weird shit's going down, as it invariably does in the Arkham universe. So there's all Cthulhu and the King in Yellow and all that jazz. My personal favourite, Dagon. He's not actually in it much, but all of these things come together to form essentially an exploratory game where you are mooching around, usually a mansion, but not always. So there's a tile-based map that you get to explore through the game. And the whole game is actually controlled by an app. So unlike the 1st edition where one person was essentially the game master, that function has now been ported to an app, so all 5 players, or up to 5 players, can play on the same side, and the app does all the heavy lifting and all the revealing of the map and handling of the puzzles and things like that. So you can interact with your environment to gain clues, to gain information about the mystery that happens to be going on. And in the background, there's always this ticking clock of escalation where things get progressively worse and worse and worse. So if you start dallying too long throughout the game, you're gonna die. Some big bad is just gonna get plonked on the map and go, right, let's have some. And, you might be able to fight it off, but another one will come along. So you've got to get a shift on. So it's all about getting through the game reasonably quickly, but encountering a good story, working out the mystery, trying to beat the big bad sometimes, fight off the cultists, shoot the Gribblies, and return to Mrs. Miggins' pie shop for tea and cakes later on at the end of the day.
Just trying to stay alive in that game is tough enough.
Pretty much, yes, you're absolutely right. And that's the beautiful thing about it. It's hard, but it's hard because it loves you. Sometimes.
It's hard because it loves you. That's the quote you're going with.
That is yes. I could say it's tough, but I prefer the term hard. Because
of course you do.
Of course, yes. Well, it's on point for the last 3 games we've talked about.
Crazy.
And the Lions.
Yeah.
But it's contrary to a lot of the games I like, because obviously I have a reputation for being, a fan of dry, boring Euros, which is true. But I'm also a fan of a good story, which is why I like things like D&D and Tainted Grail and all those sorts of jazz. But there is a good story in Mansions of Madness. Because it's a cooperative game as well. There's a lot of player interaction, a lot of discussion about what happens. I've got these powers and I've got this kit and we can beat the Gribbly with that. We can open the door with that. And I really love it for that kind of thing. And you never really know what's around the next corner because of the app. You don't know what the Dungeon Master, or the Keeper, I think it's called, isn't it? In the 1st edition, is sat there with a big sort of evil grin on their face. You don't get that with the app. It's just whammo, you're in a lot of trouble now, sunshine. Or you open the door expecting pain and there's a corridor or a nice garden and you're thinking, okay, what's going to happen now? And you have this wonderful element of suspense all the way through the game. It's ace. I really, really enjoy it.
So the app, if I remember rightly, it randomizes even the map. So even if you play the same scenario, it randomizes it slightly?
It can do. It depends on how many of the expansions you've got. So obviously all of them in my case.
I wouldn't actually say it's randomised, more that it's got like 2 or 3 set patterns.
Okay.
And so you have a random a random layout that's going to start with. So yes, you may end up in a different map than you had played last time.
So I own the game, but I must admit I haven't played it through of my own copy many times. I've generally either played one of yours, but whenever we've played it and the times I've played the same map twice, it has felt different enough. I know you guys have played the same scenarios again and again.
Bloody Innsmouth.
Yeah, I was going to say, sometimes I'm not sure you
finished it.
Yes.
You still haven't
played it again a few weeks ago. Laura and I were literally one action away from getting off that boat and the damn thing burst into flames and we all died.
So yeah, there's replayability there is what I was getting at.
Yes, no, you're absolutely right, John. There are a few alternative paths, essentially, as Steve says, for each individual map, and depending on the map and depending on the expansions you've got, which basically dictate the tiles you have, you can get different layouts as well. So some maps are more restricted. Like Innsmouth, for example, is actually quite a restrictive map in the grand scheme of things because it's telling one story and there's only one real layout for Innsmouth, but there are a number of different versions of it, so you never quite know where the key to the particular door is. It might be with the tramp, it might be in a drawer, it might be somewhere else, so you are guessing somewhat, so it does still keep it, fresh, as it were. Which is nice.
You can't just learn the layout and the sequence that you need to do to win the scenario.
Correct, exactly. So you don't know which one you're going to get, and the more expansions you get, the more mechanics it actually throws into the game. So if you add a few of the expansions as well, which usually add at least one or two more scenarios each time, a few more tiles, a couple more investigator characters. Jesus, there's about 50 the bloody things now I've got. It's deck about half an inch thick. It's ridiculous. But it adds things like character improvement, so you can level up almost. To a point, but there's additional tokens and there's additional monsters and there's bits of items and all these other things. Lots of stuff. So yes, it's not cheap, but it is totally worth it. It's like Betrayal at House on the Hill, but good.
Harsh but fair.
Yeah, harsh mistress you are, aren't you?
Yeah, he's right though.
No, he's not. I mean, yes, but.
Betrayal at House on the Hill.
It's also significantly better than the first edition, in my opinion, because the app takes out a lot of the faffing that the keeper had to do, and also it sideswipes the issue I had with the first edition, where the first edition is the only game where I've made someone cry.
Jeez,
well, I know you on some of our RPG sessions, you've made me fucking close to tears, mate.
No, this was unfortunate. This is one of those instances where I didn't read the room. Well, I didn't say read the room very well, but I didn't quite understand what this person is. It was a Tuesday night Worcester Gaming Club, so it's like an open night. Anyone can turn up. Came along with a friend. I had Manchester Madness first edition of me. I said, should we play this? And everyone was like, yeah, let's play this. This is cool. But this person had only ever played things like Azul and Pandemic, that kind of thing. So I hadn't really played this kind of like nasty Ameritrash game, and as the keeper in Mansions of Madness first edition, you have to be an arse. That's the way in which the game works. You basically just keep spending these cards which do nasty things to characters. Because of what he did, I could play two of them after each other, and he wasn't used to this kind of game, and I think he thought I was picking on him and got very upset. I felt like a horrible human being.
Because you were picking on him. It was all true.
Wanker.
I'd never met him before or since. I don't think he even came back to the Tuesday night game, which makes me feel even worse.
Honestly, do you know what? I thought bullying wasn't welcome in this kind of forum, but yeah,
as I said, if I'd realised what was going on, I could have explained to him and said, look, I'm not picking it. But when you're a bit naive and you realise after the situation and go, oh crap, yeah.
We've all been there. Plus, on the app, you get the wonderful, wonderful introductions to each scenario. So you get like the sort of text to build up. It's all written in, spoken in an English accent. It's rather wonderful. You slump in your office chair after a hard day of interviews with nothing to show for it.
Hang on, we're a British podcast doing British impersonations.
Well, it's kind
of an American game.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's more that kind of like RP, received pronunciation, kind of 1920s American.
Oh yes.
Mid-Atlantic accent.
I see. The colonies.
Slightly, yes.
Yeah.
It's good. Suddenly the phone rings, and it's wonderful. Really, really good.
It's ASMR Andy there.
I am going to jump in. So that's Manchester Madness second edition.
Both feet, bang!
I'm going to jump in with my decision, with my last game, or second game, or whatever you want to call it, because Andy's introduction saves me about 10 minutes.
Sneaky.
Smooth as a baby's arse, that segue.
So, my last choice was actually between two games which are more or less in the same way that Andy mentioned Teotihuacan and Sulkin, which being the same game with a bit of tweaking. My last two games really are Arkham Horror 2nd Edition and Eldritch Horror, and I would pick Eldritch Horror ever so slightly above Arkham Horror. Because they are more or less the same game, with Eldritch Horror being like someone's tried to file the rough edges off it, just smooth it out a little bit and take some of the clunkiness out of it. Eldritch Horror, again, based on the Arkham world, as I said before, interestingly, my edition of Arkham Horror 2nd Edition actually says it's a Call of Cthulhu game, as it's based on the Call of Cthulhu RPG. But FFG suspiciously dropped that at some point and just carried on regardless.
How curious.
So it's set in the Lovecraftian world, and the idea is really Eldritch Horror is kind of like Indiana Jones crossed with Cthulhu. Big, old one, coming to gain access to the world, opening portals all over the world, which you're trying to break through. Too many portals open, evil monster that beyond comprehension breaks through and the world ends. And you'll be globe-trotting to try and find clues to try and solve this, investigating mysteries all over the world. And I say it is like Indiana Jones because it feels like that. That bit in Indiana Jones, the map, and you've got a little red line and you're going across it. It feels like that. I'm going to start off in London. I'm going to get a boat to Paris, and then I'm going to go across continental train to Russia. And then from there, I can get a boat to Siberia and I solve this problem here, kind of thing. And half the game is trying to work out how you're going to get from places, like linking your moves together and getting your tickets and trains and such like. And then it's got this whole, as Andy said, this kind of story thing you get with these Arkham games. But rather than being like Mansion of Madness, which is like a set story, it's just all random events happen, random things. It's all card-based. So it's got that kind of emerging story that happens. I don't think I've had the kind of like set big moments I've had with Arkham Horror. There's specific games and that I can remember things that happened. But every time you have this thing of, you were in Paris, I was in Australia, and if we'd just got to India in time, we could have actually stopped the end of the world, but we couldn't. I mean, I absolutely love it. I really, really do. It's one of my most played games, actual board games ever. And that's surprising when you'll be lucky to get a game of Eldritch Horror in under 3 hours, to be fair.
I don't get out of bed for less than 2, Steve. Let's do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's that big FFG, a board that fills the entire table, tokens up the wazoo, cards everywhere. You're looking at 4 hours, really, to play a proper game. You've got to allow yourself 4 hours. If you allow yourself any less, you're dicing, you're not going to finish. I mean, you could die in the first round and the world could end. It's unlikely, but it could happen.
Yeah. Has it ever happened to you?
Yes. No, not the first round. We've had circumstances where it escalates really quickly, and what they introduced in some of the later expansions, they did introduce a difficulty system, which is quite cool. So the cards, I've got a little graphic on them which indicates whether it's an easy, medium, or difficult card. And you can choose, when you build the deck, which represents like the ongoing doom, you can choose how many of each difficulty you do. I find it easier if you do like the first third of the game is easy cards, the middle of the game is medium cards, and then the end of the game is hard cards. I always like that because it really does feel as if things are proper ramping up.
That's cool.
That's a good way. Here is a question for you, Mr. Tudor. You mentioned that Eldritch is essentially AH2 with the corners filed off.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on AH 3rd edition?
Well, I've played it and I thought I liked it, but I haven't played it since it came out.
Really? Yeah.
No, and I don't. There's nothing about it that's kind of drawn me back to it. Bizarrely.
Interesting.
I think I kind of said when we were trying to choose which games we're going to put on this list, if someone said to you, I want to play this game now, and you'd go, yes. If you'd said, do you want to play Arkham Horror 3rd Edition? I could go, yeah, all right then. Going to play Eldritch Horror? Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Okay.
And I think that's it. What the changes that were made are not bad changes, but I don't feel as emotionally kind of invested in 3rd Edition as I do in Eldritch.
Okay. See, I haven't played Eldritch, which is annoying.
No.
I played Arkham Horror 2nd, and I've got Arkham Horror 3rd, which I actually quite enjoy. Laura and I have played it quite a lot. And despite the fact she complains every bloody time we play it, this is really hard, we can't move far enough, and it's not fair, we still keep playing it. So she must obviously like it. But I've never played Eldritch.
That's really odd. Of all the games we've talked about tonight, other than D&D, Eldritch Horror is the only game that we've mentioned that I've played.
What do you think of it?
I played it with Sid, actually, at Steve's house. I got popcorn all over the board.
It's better than beer all over the board.
Yeah.
We'll not talk about that.
Eldritch and Arkham are still some of the few games that my wife will actively seek out to play.
Yeah, but your wife also cheats at both of them.
We do have to discourage her strongly.
See, Amanda will not play that kind of game anymore because it's got dice in it. It's like, if I do a skill test, I want to know I can pass it, not randomly check if I'm going to pass it.
I see.
We tried Destinies a few weeks back, which we'll get onto hopefully in a future episode, but it's like halfway between... It's actually very, very similar to Manchester Madness, but slightly simpler. Mm-hmm. But the first time you have to do a skill test, you have to roll these dice. You roll the dice, you fail, and you're like, right, that's it, I'm not playing now. I failed the skill test due to dice, not my own ability. I'm not interested. Okay, fair enough.
I think it's the randomness that attracts Kaz to it, to be perfectly honest.
Well, that's a second game on the list of must-plays now that next time we have a gaming session. Teotihuacan and Eldritch Horror.
Next
that's
PHC
pretty much an
community
entire day
out, we can play those, I think.
Yes, and it will take a day to get through both of those.
Well, like I say, yes. August, time is my own, mate. Let's do it.
No, because August is really busy for me. I've got 2 birthdays and a holiday.
Actually, the wife and the boy and the mother-in-law are away in Cornwall the last week of July. So I've also got the last week of July to fill up with something.
That is also my birthday.
Exactly.
There's a plan forming here.
Just saying.
And Alora has said, what do you want to do for your birthday? We should get a few people over, sit in the garden, have a barbecue.
Can we sit indoors and play board games?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, no.
We can indeed.
I really don't like being outside when the sun's around. So
no, that's are you like her? You basically fry in the dark.
Yeah,
when somebody turned the light on.
Yeah, I do.
Just on this video, you can see the gingerness in both me and Laura.
It's true, actually. Jesus. So you get a tan from your monitor in the dark. But yes, no. There's the kind of we're on-air planning socials here, but yes, no. There we go. We are a go for the end of July. Then it would seem.
Did you have a question, John? Sorry.
If I did, it's gone.
Fair enough.
Well then, John, since you wanted to ask a question, you've forgotten it. Why don't you tell us your second
your
game?
Punishment.
All right, so I ummed and ahed about all the stuff that I've got on this list, and I was pretty torn about mentioning Dice Hospital, but not an unsimilar game in that you're trying to build something, is Tiny Towns. So Tiny Towns, if you've not played it, you're trying to build a little town. You've got a little grid of empty squares, and you have to pick resource cubes, place them down to form patterns. And when you make the pattern that you've got in some of the central cards that you pick at random, your tokens turn into a building. And the buildings mean prizes. The more prizes you've got, the better. If you run out of space, that's it, you're out of the game. Which sounds pretty simple, right? Except that when you're picking resources, you're taking it in turns. And when you pick a resource, you're not just picking it for your board, you're picking it for everyone's board. And so very quickly, you find you have an abundance of fucking glass. Why do we need more glass, somebody? You could see perfectly well that I just needed one more square of hay, and then that weird combination of randomly laid out squares was going to turn into a nice little barn in the corner, and then my game would continue. But because you've picked glass, I've now got to figure out some way to get rid of this thing. Glass. Yeah. So I love the fact that you pick the different resource cards, the different types of buildings that you're trying to build in the first place at random. So in any given game, the combinations of buildings that everyone's trying to build on their own little boards is different. And so you very rarely have even the same combinations to start with, and then everyone plays differently. You look at different people's boards, and the best thing of all is when you can see them building something and you're like, they screwed that up. They're going to realise in about 2 turns' time. But they can't build that one there. It's just not going to work. It doesn't fit. They've run out of space.
And we're buying glass again, John.
Son of a bitch! What's wrong with you?
Yes. No, you're absolutely right. I do like Tiny Towns. It's a big hit in our house as well, John. Have you tried the expansions for it?
I knew you were going to say that.
Obviously. Genuinely, though, because they add slightly more to it. So there's one where you get money, which allows you essentially to trade resources, but you're only allowed a limited amount of money. when you do. So you can pay a coin to do something, or you can pay a coin to take. I think it's it's either trade a good or buy a good, something like that. It's been a while since I played it, and then there's another one which we haven't actually played yet. So, but it is good.
No,
does
I have
that
not
one
got
add more
this yet.
glass as well?
I think it probably could.
Son of a. It always ends up being glass for some reason. I don't know why.
Yes, that expansion's called Glass Houses.
Oh, right. Oh, fantastic. We should play that one next.
It isn't, but that's in case someone goes out and goes, "Ooh, Glass Houses expansion." No, it's not called that.
I do love this game. I was just looking at my board game stats. I've got 14 plays of this since I got. Is this a Sid? Do you own Tiny Towns?
No, I don't own Tiny Towns.
No, but the rest it's a 4 for 5, isn't it? It's Tiny Towns.
I don't know if Steve owns it actually.
Yeah, Steve's definitely got it.
Okay,
but
it's not one I've played either. Actually, I must admit.
It's an absolutely stunning game. I got a near perfect score. What I consider near. I got a 55 is my best score on that.
That's good.
That is impressive. Yeah.
I went and bragged about that on Twitter, and the designer came back to me and was like, "How did you do that?" And I bragged about that as well, and he was like, "Yeah, that would do it."
You're playing it wrong.
You probably weren't getting glass on your board.
I didn't have any glass. I'm playing with idiots who aren't able to look at my table and decipher all the cubes I have to work out what I'm trying to build. And the other thing, I had one of the Wonder card, which allowed me to move stuff around. Which was particularly useful.
Yeah, we missed that bit. You each get a special power building, and once you build that one, it tends to do something different. So, although all the other buildings in the centre are shared, you've got this one special one,
which is a secret. And it's only revealed once you've got that code. Once you've got the pieces, the code ready for it, you flip it over. You go, "Ha! I've got this," and it gives you a special ability. And some of them are brilliant. Some of them are a bit naff.
Yes.
Yeah, some of them are definitely more powerful than others. There's definitely been games where you're like, if I had that one, this would have been a very different game for me.
But there's always a scale with those as well. The ones that are a bit naff are a lot easier to build, I find. And they some of them give you points, some of them give you abilities. So there's a really nice spread with them. No, I love that. I really want to pimp out my Tiny Towns. I've decided to start buying less games and start improving the games I've got that I love.
Ooh.
So on Tiny Towns, I want to get a proper insert for it, and I've seen on Etsy you can just get plastic printed, 3D printed little taverns, little theatres and stuff like that, and you just paint them up, and that's
cool.
That's one.
That beats the wooden tokens that it comes with.
Well, the wooden tokens are still very nice, but
they are.
It's a really nice, well produced game. Actually, it doesn't feel overproduced at all. Everything is of a very good quality. You wouldn't want it any lower, but anything more than that would just be, you'd be paying for it. And it's a very reasonably priced game. It's only like
I was about to say, Roy, I think it's somewhere between 30 and 40 quid. It's not expensive
and
for
it
a board
plays
game.
from 1 to 6.
6, yeah.
1 to 6. You can play it in an hour. It's got an easy teach, and every time I've played it or introduced people to it, they've been like, "Let's play it again."
Yeah,
let's go again.
Technically, 1 to infinite.
Yeah.
Oh,
True.
really?
You could just combine lots of games together because, one person says glass, there's a squeal at the end of the room.
I was going to say there is an alternative set of rules in the game, which is to get rid of the John factor of John always picking glass just to screw you over.
Right.
There is a deck of cards with 2 of each material in, and you shuffle the cards and reveal them randomly. And the game basically at that point turns into a flip and right kind of style game.
Of course it would do.
And that makes it actually a little bit, I'm not going to say easier, but it makes it fairer because nobody can get screwed over. It doesn't make it easier because you can guarantee it'll come up with the material you don't want.
Glass.
But
glass.
Yeah,
just
glass.
make a deck of glass.
You've got to build the Crystal Palace or something like that. But that's what they did. AEG You Make It did that during lockdown. They basically did live Tiny Towns games where you took your board game and they would go on the video and just flip over the deck.
Cool.
Oh, that's quite cool, man.
Everyone could go on Facebook and compare the scores at the end of it.
That's quite nice. There is another variant of it that I've played with the guys in Worcester, actually. Although we played it at Richie's birthday, not in Worcester, but anyway, where everyone gets one choice as per the John method. But at the end of the round,
you have a card.
You turn one card over.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a bit of an element of both. So everyone gets a kind of a breather before the hammer moves on, and that's actually quite nice because you're going to get screwed 4 times out of 5, but then the one comes out. Everyone gets screwed.
I was going to say, there's a chance 1 in 5 times that something else is going to screw you over.
Yeah, but at least you can't blame someone else at that point. You just blame the game.
Yeah, that's a nice feeling.
It's the universe that's against you, not that arsehole sat next to you.
I will say, though, the expansions are very much, as Steve puts it...
Expansions, plural?
Yes, there's 2.
Yes. I didn't realise there were 2, sorry.
Yes, there's 2. The first one's called Fortunes. The second one is called something else. I say it's not
Shocker.
Glass Houses.
So the second expansion doesn't have the same name as the first expansion?
No.
Cool.
And it's nothing to do with termites, right?
Not got termites
or bees.
Or
cheesemongers.
Cheesemongers.
No, mind. I
or
genuinely can't remember what
fishnets
it's
or
called.
stockings. Okay.
But yes, that's it. That's the upcoming expansion.
We'll come back to fishnets and thigh highs, stuffed full of cheese and termites. That's what we're going to head to.
Which is really strange, considering the game is actually based in a kind of woodland community, and you are building very, very small buildings, which is why it's called Tiny Towns. But yes, there were 2 expansions, but each expansion something like 20 odd quid, and they are really, as Steve says, starters and sweets. There's really not much in each expansion for the money you get, so the real value is definitely in the base game.
In the base game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we bought that first expansion actually, I think the day before lockdown started, because we all bought it at Aircon, and just before lockdown kicked in, I think me and Amanda played it. We kind of went, that's not very interesting, is it?
Is that the Did you play Fortunes? Was that the one?
That's
the
Fortunes,
money. Yeah. It adds an interesting twist, but it's not amazing.
Yeah.
It's not a game changer, as they might say.
It makes it more malleable. But no, I wouldn't say it's a game changer, no.
That's what a good expansion really needs to do. That needs to fundamentally up the game, but without changing or adding too much.
Yes. It's like the expansion to Tolkien. It's not
you want it to
great
enrich the flavour without taking anything else away or making it too much or overpowering.
Losing the essence.
You want salt, is basically what you're saying. You want salt.
I want salt.
Or to go with the dessert analogy, it's that dollop of ice cream on top.
Or clotted cream.
Either way.
Something that comes out of a cow. Anyway.
No, not everything comes out of a cow. Is what
no, not everything. No. Oh, God, no. Oh, what have I said? What have I said? Pull the ripcord. Bail out.
Moving on. That's Tiny Towns then. Rory, Rory's gone.
No, there he is. He's just hiding.
I was about to say go to Rory, but he's too busy laughing.
All right, okay. No, I'm gonna go backwards. Right, I'm gonna pick up the horror vibe a little bit. I think that we were talking about a couple of games ago, and my second choice is the lady I've been cheating on D&D with. This is the thigh-high fishnet wearing mistress that has dragged me away from D&D, and I tell you what, it's taught me a lot about modern RPGs. So
go on, put us out for Missouri, Sid.
So this is Alien RPG, or Alien, the role-playing game, I believe is its formal title, by Free League or Free Ligan, who, quite frankly, are one of the best things, in my opinion, that's happened to role-playing games in the last 5 years. Right? Everything that has come out of those guys has been magnificent. And this, Alien RPG, is, in my opinion, the pinnacle of what they have produced. So...
Testify.
So what is it, right? Okay, so it is a tabletop RPG, much in a similar vein to D&D. So you have characters and you play those characters. You have stats, you have weapons, you have gear, you have all the standard stuff you would expect to come in a tabletop role-playing game.
Do you have glass?
You can't. Do you? Actually, I don't know if you have glass, mate. I was going to say, yeah, you might do, but you probably don't. But why does it differ? What for me differs about it is, first thing is it's dark. You die. Death is a very real part of this game. All right. Fundamentally, the game system doesn't want you to get to the other end. All right. It's out there. There's threat. There's death. You're gonna lose your character, and it's gonna hurt you. You're gonna cry. You're gonna be cut up for weeks. But that's okay. That's what we want. Right? That's what we want. It's a dice pool system. So unlike D&D, you're rolling a number of dice to equal your stats rather than just a D20 and a damage die. That is cleaner. It's simple. It's smooth. It simplifies a lot of the gameplay. Combat is you just pick the number of dice you have for the weapon or your ranged combat, or whatever it is. You roll them. If you get some 6s, you succeed. If you don't, you don't. You move on. There's no counting up how much damage you've done and all this kind of maths. There's no spreadsheets. There's none of that shit, right? It's basic, simple, fast.
Until you come to all the damage tables and you have to roll on, was it 1, 2, 3, 4 different tables?
No.
Oh, that's Forbidden Lands.
Forbidden Lands, mate. That's a different game. Very good too, but not what we're talking about right now because it's not as good as Alien.
Stay on target,
Right,
Gold Leader.
Stay on target. But then the thing that really actually notches up the amazingness of this game is they introduce a concept of what they call stress. So stress and stress dice add to your dice pool. So you can choose to take stress by wanting to push a roll. So you don't get what you want, you can push a roll, you can take a stress dice, that adds to your stress pool. Amazing, you think. I'm getting stressed, I get another dice. Not so amazing because the stress dice have a negative effect. So you roll a 1 on a stress dice and you will effectively, as a character, panic. And what do? You then have to roll a panic roll. When you roll a panic roll, there's a table of things that go horribly wrong. A la the Alien movies. You start shaking like a little leaf, you drop your weapon, or you just go apeshit mental and die. Right? So it's quite a scale of things going on here.
Brutal.
And but what that does to the game is it heightens everything. It makes a basic dice roll really quite stressful because as you go through the game, as you play through, you become generally more stressed out because you've had to push a few rolls or you've been given stress because you've seen some traumatic scene or whatever. But eventually you get to a point where you're rolling potentially more dice in your stress pool than you have in your stat. So not only are you more likely to succeed because it's the stress dice have successes on them as well, 6s, so you're more likely to succeed. You're rolling 20 odd dice or something, your chances of getting a 6 are pretty damn high. But if 9 of those dice are stress dice, then you're probably going to panic and something bad will happen. So it really drives a completely different way of playing. And the second thing about the system is, so far, we haven't played the campaign. So you can play it as a campaign game, or you can play it as what they freely call the cinematic versions of the game. And the cinematics, or one of a better word, are one-shots. All right? So a lot of them are quite compact, maybe 6-10 hours or even less to play through. A lot of them come with pre-gens, so you can just pick it up, you can have a good blast with your mates, and you can put it away and you're finished. And those cinematics, and it's a great word for it, are exactly what they are. They are like playing through a movie of your own. They come in 3 acts in general. The first act tends to ramp it up, set the scene. Second act, bit more pressure, bit more tension. Somebody's probably dead by now. So they've probably picked up the spare character because there's always a spare character floating around somewhere.
I was going to ask what happens when you do lose a character. Because I've still not played this yet, and that upsets me.
Yes, you need to play it. When you lose a character, quite often, when the cinematics, there will always be a spare available in some form or another. You'll have another pre-gen to pick up, or
there's a lot of NPCs.
There's a lot of NPCs. About. You need them, and you think, "Oh, I don't need all that. I'm not going to die." No, mate, you're going to die, right? It's just going to happen because some of the rolls for the monsters will kill you straight away. They just literally insta kill. You're dead. End of game. You're out. Start a new character.
But I've got armor. No, you don't.
No, you're tough. It's gone straight past your armor. You're dead. You're just a mess on the wall. All right, that is literally it. But
you've got armor, but it's got a huge hole in it, and there's an alien poking its finger in there.
It is
pretty much
the whole game. Right? I am absolutely in love with it, and it fixes a lot of the problems I had with D&D. It fixes the combat. It fixes the stodginess, But the one thing I think we've talked about, a few of us talked about before. Why do I love it so much? Because I'm a lot older and I want something more mature. I want something different out of my gameplays, and I want threat. I want to feel like I can make a mistake. My decisions matter. So we touched on earlier, D&D, it almost felt like you can't die. Your decisions are somewhat not your own to an extent. You can always be, you die, you get taken to the temple and get resurrected, or you get cursed and you can have some spell to take all the badness away. But an alien, if I make a bad choice, I got to live with that. I've got to either survive.
Live very long though, yeah.
Well, I've either got some horrible critical injury, which means I'm maimed and I can't even shoot my gun because my arm is gone or something like that, or I'm dead. And my choices mattered, and that really changed what I wanted out of an RPG. Honestly, that is my big thing about it, is my choices, my decisions actually mattered. And to some extent, the GM couldn't overrule what happened. Like in D&D, you can often wave away a death.
You can fudge it a bit, yeah.
Cause magic.
I mean, you still can in Alien. You could choose not to say that you've had a 6 rolled on that monster attack or whatever, but it doesn't feel like that. It feels like I'm a lot more in control of my own game, and if I make a bad call or I make a good call, it matters and it affects the game, and then me up also affects my mates. So if I up and get stressed and screw it up, they probably do as well. So now they're howling at me saying, what the did you do that for? Because it was not like a good idea at the time, but now these lot are all stressing out, and it's brilliant. I mean, it is fantastic. It is, yeah, I can't say any more.
Can I ask then, Sid, you said that if you make a bad decision that you've got to pay for it. When you make a good decision or something turns out good, is the payoff equal when it goes well?
Yes, because... No, it can be. It can be, Andy. You're shaking your head. The other thing that this game brings and the Alien RPG system brings is the agenda system. So every character in the cinematics has a hidden agenda. And some of them, and each act, they kind of escalate and change, and you get rewards for hitting your agenda. So somebody's agenda I'm going to pick something that isn't in the game. Somebody's agenda might be to, I don't know, steal somebody's money or something like that. They're not like that. They tend to be a bit more aggressive, a bit more friction causey. So, you don't like somebody, therefore you're going to dick them over kind of agendas. And that
isn't that the same in every game?
Well, no, it's not. Well, maybe
not actively,
it can be. It's not actively, but this is actually a part of the core system. So even in the campaign play, you have agendas. They tend to be less confrontational in the campaign, but it's almost like, if you're watching some reality TV show and you keep thinking they've put these people together because they're going to cause friction. So when you've got these agendas, Rory, back to your question, the agendas make you play and want to play your character in particular ways, and it molds your choices. So you may make a choice that you as a player may never have made, but because your agenda is encouraging you to play that kind of a role, you might, like the Weyland-Yutani kind of company man may have an agenda that they have to escape with an alien at all costs kind of thing. And that will make them behave in certain ways. And you start getting this kind of back channel chat with your GM to suddenly start saying, well, people are frantically typing away when we're playing it online to say, I'm going to be doing that. Steve, is there a bag somewhere where I can shove this alien dead body in? And you're like this, suddenly walking around with this, hulking dead body. And if you can win your agenda, you win story points and you kind of develop your character and you get rewards for your good decisions, whatever they may be. So,
what is really cool about the agenda points is the agenda points belong to the player, not the character. So if your character dies, you keep your story points. And if you play in the next cinematic scenario, you carry over your story points.
That's quite cool.
Even though you're playing a completely different character in a completely different scenario.
Which is quite nice.
That's interesting.
Also, I do love the agendas for the fact that it sets everybody up on edge right from the start because you are instantly suspicious of everybody. Their agenda might be quite benign, but...
I was going to say, are there agendas where you are genuinely working with other people, or are they all things that would set you against the other people?
The best way to think of it, John, have you played Nemesis?
Yes.
You know how in Nemesis, which, to be fair, is ripped off of Alien, everyone's got a secret mission which they're trying to do? Mm-hmm. It's like that. You've got a shared agenda. Your shared agenda is to live.
Yes.
True.
It's what else you've got to do at the same time.
When I joined you for the one game of Alien back in last year, I really love the agenda idea, and I didn't have the character I picked up didn't have a very confrontational agenda at all. It was one that was, I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to essentially ingratiate myself. I'm trying not to give anything away. I was a smarmy bastard, really, but it was really good. So I don't feel that it was necessarily confrontational, but it gave me such direction. I'm coming in because I was coming in hot to a game that was already you'd already played 2 or 3 sessions. I didn't know the rules. Steve said you're this character. I read the bio. I was like, okay, cool, and I had this motivation from the go. This is what I've got to try and do this game. And had I stuck around, it would have gone. But I love the ideas of agendas. I nicked them and have applied them to my homebrew D&D because I thought they were so rewarding. Instantly see the value of them.
They're fantastic. And then you've got the concept of buddies and rivals, which plays into what you just said, John.
That was another good one.
So some of your player characters like each other, some don't, and just because you're a rival doesn't mean you're going to have to kill them. It just means that you don't like something about them, and your agendas quite often play on that friction.
Yes. Or you're in competition with them, I guess.
Yeah, that's that kind of thing.
Yeah. That's another way of putting the rival, actually. Yeah, you don't necessarily hate each other, but you may be going for the same thing, just in different ways.
But yeah, it's for me, it's opened my eyes into a different way of playing RPGs, which I'm really, really getting a lot out of. And it's opened up the door. It opened the door to a lot of Free League games for us as a group, I think. It was one of our introductions into the Free League kind of Mutants Year Zero system, and the pain and anguish that it can bring in both equal measures, but it brings a lot of joy and fun. And I think a lot of the, we've had some great experiences through D&D, but D&D never stopped me sleeping. Right, but after quite a few sessions of our Aliens games, I'd go to bed and I just, my brain was just firing in so many new and exciting ways. It was an amazing feeling and experience, and that is why for me Alien fits into one of my into my choices tonight, because it's brilliant. It really is wonderful.
To put it into context, I bought that game on a bit of a punt. I bought the PDF version of the main rulebook. It was on Drive-Thru RPG at a reduced price. It was like 10-15 quid, something stupid. That I kind of went, 10-15 quid, sod it. That's worth a punt. Let's have a look. I've now own everything physical they've printed, and I think most of us have got the next book on pre-order. Mm-hmm. That's how much we've gone from, let's give it a go to, whoa, we're in this. And there's also, they've kind of teased they're going to use the same system to do a Lovecraft version. So they're going to be like a Call of Cthulhu cinematic system with a similar stress system.
Sold!
That would be good.
Bye.
Take my money.
That is Alien from Free League.
Hey now, gents. This is Chris here from the Secret Cabal Gaming Podcast, sending a shout out from the better side of the pond. I remember a few years back, I was told to listen to you as you were the British version of our show, and I thought a bullshit. Yeah, I was wrong, and I've been hooked ever since. I seriously, when I went to London, I wish I could have met you guys. You seem wonderful. Every time I listen, I feel like you're all my mates, to use your own terms. I always make sure I've got either a gin and tonic or a pint of delicious porter every time I listen to you. So, just want to say I am incredibly happy to congratulate you on hitting 100 episodes. That is like a huge achievement. That is big. You should be very proud of what you do. It's awesome. And I am sure that you are all riding high on that experience. It's also fortuitous that I'm recording this on the 4th of July weekend. So I'm well stocked with beer and cider and gin as we celebrate our independence from a tyrannical nation full of limey shit. Well, okay, Jamie would normally edit this part. Anyways, so yeah, congrats and keep up the amazing work. I love you guys. You're great. Yeah, next time I should definitely have more T and less G when I record. Crap.
There's one left on your list.
So I'm going to keep it short and sweet because this is a short game. It's a bloody brilliant game. And I think when I've mentioned it to you guys, I think Steve and Andy, you've both said that you really want to play it, and you absolutely should. You should just go and buy it, to be honest, because you can play this really easy. It's a 2-player game. It's Seven Wonders Duel from Repo Productions by Antonio Boza and Bruno Cathala. It's a spin-off, brother, sister to Seven Wonders, but where Seven Wonders is actually now a bit archaic and, in my opinion, now a bit crap. Seven Wonders Duel is...
Don't talk to Laura about that.
But no, it's a brilliant... It's a 2-player, small footprint, 1-hour game that it's like an espresso. It's like a... it's like a shot of adrenaline. It's a small package, but it delivers massively on your thinking, your strategy, your tactics, your choices, your decisions, your interactions. Everything in this game is on 11 from the get-go. So it's a civilization building game. You've got these 3 ages, just like you do in Seven Wonders, a pyramid of cards. Some are face up, some are face down. As you take cards away, you'll reveal cards that are underneath. You have access to them, and in your turn, your opponent's turn, you just pick one card and you add it to your tableau. You get the benefits of it. Then it's your opponent's turn and they take one card, and it keeps going like that. It's really, really simple. If you've got the raw materials, you can buy it, whether they be stone or clay or glass.
Yeah.
Or it costs money. You pay those things and you get it. It adds. It is very easy to teach. There are 5 or 6 different types of cards. They all do the same thing throughout all the different ages. They just get better as the ages progress. One of the things I absolutely love about this game is the end game conditions. There's 3 different ways the game can end, and they're all quite dramatically different. Points is the one it's going to go to at most of the time. So all of your different types of cards are worth different types of points at the end of the game. So brilliant, done. Whoever gets the most wins there. Second one is a military victory. So you've got on your little tiny board, you've got this little red marker that essentially swings back and forth on this track. So every time I get a military card, I move it X amount of spaces, depending on how powerful that card is, towards you. If I ever get it to its 10th and final space, the game instantly wins. My armies have overrun your civilization and I win the game. What's great about that is that you can, when you are doing that, when you are the attacking force, you are just gunning for that extra card. Your opponent can see it coming and they're trying to do everything they can to forestall you and then also win on points or also win on the science. And the science is just a matter of collecting certain cards, the green cards. You've just got to get the 7 different science tokens, science icons, and if you get 6 of them, you win, just because you are superior in intellect, your whole civilization. Game
So is
wins.
the science stuff on the same like visibility? Are you always aware of how close everyone is on different?
So you can, I can look at your tableau and I can see you've got 5. If you get any other science card, or if you get the little globe one in the 3rd age, if you get that card, you win. So now I've got this point where actually I don't want to be revealing any cards, because I know that if I take this card and then I turn this one over and it's the globe, you pick it up and win. So now I'm trying to pick cards that don't reveal anything, that are going to give you an advantage. I always want to be on the advantage, but I don't want to pick something up that I don't want as well. So this is where Seven Wonders, going back to the expansions as we were talking about with Tiny Town, there's the Pantheon expansion for Seven Wonders Duel, which brilliantly sits on top of this tiny little board that Seven Wonders Duel has. The Pantheon sits on top of it perfectly. It's almost like they designed the game to have that expansion, even though the expansion came out years and years after. Then you add all the gods and it gives you some more options, some more things you can do in your turn to just tweak it, just change the flow of the battle. There's now another expansion that came out last year, which I haven't played with yet. It's still in cellophane on my desk. It is an utterly fantastic game that you can read the rule book. You can start playing this within minutes because the rule book's brilliantly laid out. It's fantastic. It goes through everything.
That's a rarity these days.
It's so well put together.
This my games.
It is so well put together. You could buy this and if you went to, you could pick it up from a shop, put it on the table. You could be playing within 5 minutes, and you could be finished in 45. And you finish that game, and you'll enjoyed and have been annoyed and frustrated and vexed and everything in that 45 minutes.
Sounds good.
Strongly recommend it. It's in the Board Game Geeks top 100 games. I think it's the only one of our entire list that is in that top 100. Is it?
No, I think it's quite a few.
I was looking at it. Okay, fair enough. I only went as far as Seven Wonders Duel and stopped looking, to be honest. Yeah, it's in there. I'm all right. I'm not being a complete knob.
I'd imagine X-Wing, Eldritch Horror, Teotihuacan, Mansions of Madness.
Okay. I take that bit back then. Just Seven Wonders Duel is higher ranked than all of those.
Well, someone's got that wrong, haven't they? He says having never played it, so I don't know.
It is,
I really would like to.
20 quid, you cannot go wrong with this game at all. I can't see why someone wouldn't love it.
201 games.
I have played this.
Have you? I thought you hadn't played this.
According to BG Stats, I've played it 7 times.
Oh.
Guess how many times I've won?
Is it a very uniform shape?
Yes, I have played it with Adam, because Adam's got it, and over lockdown it's on Board Game Arena. Unfortunately, it's a premium game on Board Game Arena, so you actually need to have the pay account. But yes, and the Board Game Arena version does actually work really well.
Oh, brilliant.
I am shockingly bad at it, mainly because what happens is I pick what I think is the best card for me that turn, which reveals 2 even better cards, which then Adam goes and snap-foos.
Nice.
No, I do like Seven Wonders.
It's quick. So. It's a very quick game to play. It is easy because it's take a card off the pile, and that's it.
That is your action. That's your entire action.
Yeah.
It's just which card you pick, and then what you do with that card. You can sell it to get coins, which you need, whether you build your wonder or not. Because it being called Seven Wonders, you're trying to build your wonders. So each of you have 4. So if you build, you can only build 7 in a game called Seven Wonders, obviously. But they give you special abilities. So this wonderful thing where you go, actually, if I build this one, I get some money, you lose some money, and I get another turn immediately. So I'll do that. And then this one will also do this. And you could trigger off these things. You just go have a spat of just dicking on your opponent for 5 minutes while they sit there with their head in their hands.
Chain dicking.
Chain dicking.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and that's my second game. Waggle Dance and Seven Wonders Duel. Fantastic.
Excellent.
You can pick up both for under 50 quid.
Well, if you can find Waggle.
If you can find Waggle Dance.
It's like the 80, if you can find them.
I can give Tim a ring now, I'm sure. I can pop down the shops and buy one right now, actually. No, they're going to be shut any minute. Never mind.
So close.
So close.
Is this your dealer, your game dealer?
Yeah, my game dealer. He's just off the canal as well, too.
Wow. This game's fallen off the back of a boat, has it?
It's fascinating, actually. You just mentioned the BGG Top 100. Although quite a lot of the games we've mentioned are on there, I don't think any of them are in the top 10.
No?
Although, I mean, there are some belting games in the top 10. I mean, but yeah, you're right. We've picked some games which are way beyond that top 100. Maybe the top 100 is something worth us looking in at some point, but not now. Mainly because we have already talked for far too long already. So it's time to round this fantabulous episode off. I was about to say shit show, but let's try and be positive for once in our lives.
100 episodes. 100, Steve.
100 episodes of ramshackle nonsense. So, yes, thank you very much for listening. We will be back to kind of normal scheduling next week, and we've already got some games lined up. So I know a lot of people have been saying that they're a little bit disappointed by the amount of RPGs we've been discussing. That's because of basically lockdown means that's what we've been playing. But we have played some board games. In fact, a lot of us have played board games at the same time, which was a novelty.
All together.
A refreshing
It
novelty.
was lovely, wasn't it?
So we should be we're getting back onto the more traditional board game chat soon. And of course, with fingers crossed, we should be having a board game expo soon as well. But
Hurrah.
let's see what happens about that. As per usual, if you'd like to leave us a review on iTunes or your podcast platform of choice, we would very much appreciate it. If you'd like to chat to us, we are on Twitter. Collectively, we are at PolyhedronC. I'm at Wahoffamadenga.
I am at Sonic H with a 0.
I'm at John_Cage.
I'm at Rory J. Summers.
And I'm still
Sid
not
isn't allowed
there.
out unsupervised.
Not officially there. That's
I think I might need to reactivate my Twitter account, actually.
We are also on Facebook. Go and say hello to the Facebook page there. We do get a lot of people saying hello and dropping us messages on there. We also have a guild at Board Game Geek, and it is number 2726. We also have a website, polyhedroncollider.com, which is imminently about to get its first written review in about 2 years, courtesy of yours truly, once I can be bothered taking another picture of the game I'm reviewing.
It might end up with a second one.
Don't tell me you've extracted a digit, Mr. Tudor.
Well, partly because I've got a Kickstarter game demo, a prototype here at home, and there was no way I'm going to record a video in time. So I can either write a script and then record a video, then edit a video, or I can write a review, which is about 1/3 of the effort.
That's fair, yes. Videos
Easy
are hard.
wins for the win.
So, until next time, well, hopefully another 100 episodes.
Yeah.
Yes. Here.
Until a high-profile court case.
Bye.
Ta-ra.
Cheerio.
Catch you later.
Bye-bye.